Today, we're taking a look at what happened between the Huskies. We'll talk to Coach Wilcox, and I'll break down some film for you. Coming up right now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bear Insider, Ultimate Insider Podcast. I'm Mike Pawlawski. Today, we are breaking down Dogs versus Huskies, what happened, things you should look at. I will be breaking down film in a little bit. I will also be talking to Coach Justin Wilcox. But let's talk about the game some. Obviously, Cal coming off that performance in Boulder, trying to regroup, trying to figure things out. The defense, once again, last week they held Colorado to 13 points in regulation, 20 points overall. This week, they held that incredibly efficient, potent University of Washington offense to just 6 points in the first half. That's pretty impressive. You think about the fact that no team had held Washington out of the end zone on their opening drive of the season. Not a single team had stopped them on their opening drive from scoring a touchdown. Cal held them out of the end zone for an entire half. And so hats off to the defense, to the dudes, to the players, also to that coaching staff for putting together a great, patient scheme. And we'll talk about that. We'll look at some film in just a second. But the offense obviously had to come along, and the offense was scoreless in the first half as well. So at a certain point, I guarantee that this team is getting frustrated, the defense with the offense and vice versa. But they have not shown cracks. They have not shown that they are kind of in disarray right now. They still seem to be playing together and pulling for each other, so that's huge. The offense, however, again, same type of woes. The offensive line needing to get better at that unit is a huge key for this game. Being able to block for runs. You have a couple of fantastic running backs actually, but really good freshman running back in Jaden Ott. And then DeCarlos Brooks runs hard. Damian Moore was out there. He was running, doing some things during this game too. So you've got some dudes who will run the ball hard in the running game if the offensive line can get their blocks in. I'm not talking about, dominating pancake blocks, anything like that. There's a couple times in that game where you just got a hat on a hat, meaning you had an offensive body squared up in position blocking a defensive body. Didn't have to be dominating, just has to be positional blocking. And when you did, Jaden Ott or DeCarlos Brooks or Damian Moore made the most of it. And so if they can just get to that position where they're not whiffing on blocks, they're not overextending on blocks, they're not missing blocks on their assignment, that is a huge piece of the run game right there. And so consistently getting a hat on a hat in good position is, I think, right now exactly what they're striving for. We'll hear from Coach later. But on top of that, pass protection. Once again, really tough. Washington had some really good edge guys, each coming in at about 270 pounds, 6'4". They could fly, and they were super athletic off the edge. And so knowing that, Cal made an offensive line switch coming into it. They took left tackle Ben Coleman, moved him down to left guard. Took Braden Rome, former right tackle, moved him to left tackle. Left TJ Sessions out there at right tackle. Obviously, Matt Cindric was the big injury, so he was out. Vaticani moved to right guard, and they had Driscoll at center. And so they were trying to get some guys on the edge who had played the position at tackle and were comfortable playing that tackle position. And so the matchup was okay. It was okay on the left side. I thought Rome, for the most part, did a decent job up there. The right side, TJ Sessions, they gave up some pressures out there. And he was going up against Tice, who's a good pass rusher, good edge guy. Tice came in, I think, with 5.5. I think he had 8.5 sacks after this game. And so a career game for him out there. And yeah, it's about dudes. Washington had some dudes out there. It's about protections. You got to get some guys over there to help in the scheme. If you're going to ask your quarterback to drop back in the pocket, then you got to help him out as well. And you can't leave that tackle on an island, especially knowing how talented Washington's guys are. But it's also about just physical performance. And you got to step up. You got to get your blocks. You got to make it happen out there. Even when you're on an island, you got to give your quarterback 2.7. If you give him 2.7 seconds to make something happen, that's what you need. And so it didn't happen in this game. And then we talked to Coach about every game. It's 5 to 8 plays, and no matter what level I've been at, no matter what league I've been in, what conference, it's 5, 7, 8 plays in a game that change everything in close games. And if you win those 5 to 8, you win the game. If you don't, you don't. And so there were some plays that the Bears could have made offensively that would have won games for them, move the chains, keep drives alive. There were some plays defensively that the Bears could have made to get them off the field, get them out of the end zone, or to stop a touchdown. We will break down a couple of those on film in just a second. But my overall thoughts were the Bears played better. I thought offensively they had a decent half, 21 points. A couple of guys I thought offensively played really well. One of them, Jack Plummer, played courageously out there. 21 of 34, 240 and change, and 3 touchdowns under an onslaught of pressure. So he was getting hit on quick passes. He was getting hit on 3-step with just a hitch. And so sometimes you're going to get pressure, but you have to be able to throw from a clean pocket every now and then. I thought Jack played extremely well given the circumstances. J. Michael Sturdivant played really well as well. 8 catches, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's his biggest career game as a Bear. And so I thought he played extremely well out there at wide receiver as well. Jay Knott showed up not just in the running scheme, carrying the rock, but I actually really like the way that he blocks. He was getting after it in the backfield, blocking dudes. And so as a freshman, that says a lot for him. DeCarlos Brooks was running hard. He was doing a nice job. Maven Anderson showing up for the second game in a row, making a lot of catches out there. Played very well, made a great catch down the goal line. And then Mason Starling. He last 2 games, he's had an opportunity, and he's caught a lot of balls. And so I think that there is some definite bright spots on offense in the passing game, especially. Jay Knott, obviously, is a bright spot. Boy, if they just give him a seam, he can make something happen. So I think offensively they have some tools. They just need to get that blocking up front to get it done. Defensively, Daniel Scott, once again, great game. We had him on the show last week. Great play, great player, making consistent, repetitive plays, getting stops. The way that Cal kept Washington from scoring on those first drives and really kept them scoreless in the first half is playing this high cover 4 that made them throw the ball under, made them throw the shallow routes, made the quarterback check down. To his credit, Michael Penix did that, but they weren't able to get those huge explosive plays in the first half. Now, we'll talk about one in the second half here coming up, but they weren't able to get the big throws downfield, the vertical throws that they like. And so Daniel Scott, Craig Woodson, both doing a fantastic job at that safety position. I think they're doing a nice job. Jackson Sermon, once again, a very clean game inside. Didn't make a ton of mistakes, doesn't make a ton of mistakes at that linebacker position. So, there's some bright spots both sides of the ball, and they just have to put it all together. It's always about the pit. It's always about winning and losing up front. Washington obviously had a great offensive line, and so they gave their quarterback a little bit of time in the second half, and he was able to get it done. Offensively, the Bears need to do the same for their quarterback, and you'll find that you find a lot of different outcomes in these games. Right now, we'll talk to Coach Wilcox about his thoughts on the game. I always talk to coaches. It's never as good or as bad as it feels right after the game. But once you watch film, then you get a real sense of what happened in the game. So right now, let's talk to Coach, and then we'll come back with a little film breakdown. Joining me now, head coach Justin Wilcox. And Coach, obviously you guys played him tough early on in the game. Score didn't turn out the way you wanted it. Tell me what you saw on film after this game.
Really competitive game. Thought our players gave us everything that they had. In order to win, we needed to get something going offensively in the first half. Didn't quite get that going. And then in the second half, our offense, third quarter especially, got rolling, got some scores, and then we needed one more stop on a third down on defense, and we had a few opportunities and didn't get it done. Then we gave up the explosive on with really bad eyes and man coverage where the guy held it for a long time. So even with all that said, we had the ball twice in the fourth with a chance to go down and tie it and potentially go for the win, and weren't able to get it done. So it's frustrating because there's 5 or 6 plays that you look at that really could have turned turn the tide in that game, and we were not able to get it done.
And we talked about it, 5 to 8 plays every single game are the difference in the game in the end. You're the first team to hold them without scoring on their first drive. You held them without scoring the entire first half. What were you doing, or you guys getting right that other teams hadn't to that point?
Oh, I don't know. I thought our defensive coaches did a great job going into the game. Looking at the matchups, what they did well, and how are we going to try and make them play left-handed? I thought our defensive coaches did a great job of that, forcing them to drive the ball and be really efficient. And they are. I mean, the QB is an excellent player, and the receivers are really good. The O-line is exceptional. And I thought they did a good job of kind of battling and then trying to, get off on a third down or a fourth down or force a field goal. And so again, there's nothing magic about any of it, but I thought our coaches did a great job putting the plan together against an explosive offense. And then our players really gave us great effort.
Yeah. And I love the game plan too. Staying high over the top against a team that loves to push the ball vertically, right? You think eventually they're going to make that mistake, do something. But what you guys were able to do is force them to run as many plays as possible and eventually stall out, which was a great game plan going in. Second half, you come back and the offense starts to dial it up. Not necessarily a bunch of different play selection, but you got a little more interior protection for Jack. Talk about what was going on there and the guys that were making plays.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as, we blocked better. We've, got some runs. We threw it and caught it. And that's what you got to do to move the ball. I mean, I thought guys made some great plays. And then some of them were, routine, but we made them. And that's important too. Not every play needs to be the acrobatic circus catch or the most impressive run. It just needs to be good football. And we played much better football, especially in that third quarter on offense.
Yeah, that's the truth. You watch film sometimes, and I always, as a coach, I always watch film, and you're watching base run blocks. We just get a hat on a hat, and if running back finds a seam, and you get 6 yards, and it's a beautiful thing, right? And you do that over and over, and you have success. And how do you get to the consistency of that? I know that that's what you've been going for all game long, but how do you get to the consistency of that? Because that's the season. That tells the difference at the end of the season, right?
Absolutely, it does. It tells the difference on a drive, a quarter, a half, a game, a season, and there's not one thing, Mike. I mean, it's maybe it's one position player needs to do this better, or maybe he needs to be more consistent with his footwork, or maybe it's the identification on a run, or it's the execution of a throw and catch on a pass. I mean, it's playing up to our potential more often. That's what we need to do. And so in order to do that, you got to be specific about what you're working on. So, it's not hoping and want to. The want to is there. The guys are competing. They're trying. It's, want to only get you so far. You got to go out and execute it on game day. And I really appreciate the way they practice and compete, but performance matters, and you got to execute it on game day. And we got to do that more often.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. As you watch film, you see guys, they want it. They are definitely going to go play, but it's that first step hesitancy. And we talked about this a little bit last week, where you have a technique, the technique. Are you fully trusting? Are you fully engaged in what you're doing? And you can see a little bit of that on film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we need to continue to push the players, and they got to push themselves. And, again, I think we talked about this last week. Confidence is earned. You have to prepare in order to have confidence, and then you have to demonstrate the ability in order to have true confidence. And so we've seen it in moments. We just haven't seen it often enough. And that's where we're pushing them, and we're competitive in practice for that reason. So you can continue to build it in your preparation.
Yeah. And this because you played and you coached in the whole 9 yards, more for the people at home. But like, I like it when I was a kid growing up surfing, and it's a weird analogy, but you had to commit to going down the face that wave, taking off, carving, making the cut. And if you didn't, if you half-assed, you'd fall off.
Yep.
Like at some point you have to say, okay, I'm just doing this, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And so I think that's kind of the next step for this team, as I see it, especially on that offensive line.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And we talked about that on Monday at the meeting, is you have to go all in. Like, you don't dip your toe in the water at this level of football. And, it's not maybe by anybody's on purpose, but you really have to force yourself to commit to it and go all in with it and put yourself out there. And yeah, I mean, we play under bright lights and there's a lot of people watching, and that's the reason you sign up to play here. And, there are guys that got to continue to work through that. And so we have to help them. Our job as coaches is to help them put themselves out there. That's the role, part of our role as coaches.
Yeah. And that's, it's a great point. The human nature by nature is survival instinct first, not excel first. And so you have to get them past the survival instinct into the excel phase. Yeah. I think it's great. Some guys did excel in this game. Yeah. So let's talk about them. I think J. Michael Sturdivant is really coming into his own as a player, becoming the guy that you expected him to be. Talk about his performance, not just in this game, but over the season.
I think in the last month, it's been noticeable, that he's taken a step forward. And we knew J. Mike had a lot of physical tools, but he's becoming, a more well-rounded receiver. In everything that he's doing, he's making some great plays for us. He can run, he can catch. He made a fantastic play on a third down coming out of the break where he had to track the ball and just at the last second was able to get his eyes on it and come up with it. Not an easy catch by any means, but I think he's just getting better and better, and his ceiling is very, very high. So we're excited about J. Mike.
Yeah, another guy, Maven Anderson, showed up. Fantastic circus catch down on the goal line. That you just love to see these guys contort it all back and out of shape and reaching back for the ball. And he showed up last couple of games too.
Yeah, we've been talking, I think, a lot about Maven since the beginning of the year. He is a fantastic athlete. He's strong. He's fast. He's got ball skills. He's got courage. He's smart. I mean, he can do a lot of things. We just need to try to get him the ball so we can build that confidence and get into a rhythm. And I thought you've seen more and more of that. And he's made those type of plays in practice quite often, and it was nice to see him make one of those in a game where everybody can see it.
Yeah. And then Mason Starling actually came in. We saw, he just got back on the field last week, and we see him. He shows up. He's making a lot of catches, made a lot of catches again. This game showed up in big spots. Talk about his contribution and then talk about his health at the end of this. Are we going to get him back?
Yeah. Mason did in the last couple of weeks. He's got an opportunity. He has flashed since he's been here, but he had a hard time staying on the field. And so he made some big catches for us. He's a big body, a big target. We'll see here late in the week. He's day-to-day right now. So we'll see late in the week if he's going to be able to go. But, he did show promise in the last 2 weeks. We just got to get him healthy.
Yeah, another guy, and you notice I didn't say him first because I'm always picking on I'm always with the quarterbacks, but I think Jack Plummer, when you watch film and you watch his game, he has shown so much courage back there in the pocket. And yes, he has created a little bit of his own pressure at times in that Colorado game especially, but he's also sitting back there taking shots, delivering balls.
Yeah,
pretty damn accurate. The catch that you were talking about with J. Mike, Jack Plummer threw that before J. Michael Sturdivant ever got out of his break, like on time, put a little shape on the ball. He's just playing with so much courage, and in spite of getting pressured a ton, he is executing at a pretty high level for what he's got.
I would agree with you. He's there are a few that we'd like to get get the ball thrown and throw it out of bounds or whatever, but we need to protect Jack better. I mean, there's no secret. We all know that. And he has continued to stay in there and throw the ball and is showing courage, and he's a talented passer, and we just got to give him some more opportunities to throw it clean. And then also when it's not there and the clock's ticking, that he can ditch it if he needs to.
Yeah. And then one guy, he always shows up in the run game, Jade Knott, right? And so he looks good. The pass game, though, I saw him picking up some blocks this game, like sticking his nose in there against some big dudes. I like the way, just his overall effort is really nice.
He's got a lot of pride. And of course he wants the ball to run it and he wants to catch it on the perimeter, but he is a team guy and he takes pride in being a complete back. He doesn't want to just be the one trick pony, so he wants to be able to play on every down and run it, catch it, protect, and really, really pleased with his attitude towards all that. It's been impressive.
Yeah. And so we talked about the offensive guys. Let's talk about a couple of defensive guys. I think Woodson out there, I mean, he is playing really at a high level, and the less you talk about a guy on the air and after the fact, it means he's doing his job because the play's not around him. He made one play on mesh where he literally hit the first guy coming across who was going to be the pick guy, and then steps up and hits the mesh guy who's coming, the guy who's supposed to get the ball. Like, he's a really smart football player and really gifted on top of it.
He is. I mean, Craig's we all kind of saw it really in the past couple of years, and unfortunately last year he was injured, but he's playing well, and it's really not a surprise to any of us because you've seen it coming, and it's nice to see him doing the games because he's smart, he's got good instincts, and he's a good athlete. And so you kind of combine all three things, and he's tough. So he's what you're looking for in a safety, and I think he's got a really bright future.
And you got a couple really good ones. Daniel Scott, obviously, we've talked about him a bunch. Daniel always seems to be in the right place, doing the right thing, trying to make the right checks. Seems like a great leader on the team. Had another game where he was in the right spot 90% of the time.
Yeah, I think both those guys, that's a good pair of safeties. I think a lot of people would like to have those two safeties playing for them. And we ask them to do a lot in terms of communication and disguise and some of the things that we ask them to do, but they're good football players. They're really smart guys. They're team guys. So really, we're fortunate to have both of them.
So I told you we would take a little look at what was going on defense out there. Washington was really good. Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, at using formations. We talked about this in the podcast leading up. Really good at using formations to get your eyes in the wrong place, get you out of position, get you in the wrong sets for the personnel they have in the game. One play in particular, they ran a trips into the boundary, shrunk it to bunch, and they got Cal out of position. I'm going to break that down for you right now. Let's take a look at how you use formations to get teams out of position and how Washington did it in the game. So formations can be tough in college football, a little bit wider hash than the NFL. And so as a defensive coordinator, you've got to decide, do I want to take, for instance, this play, you've got 3 trips into the boundary, plus you've got the tailback into the boundary as well. So you have 4 eligible receivers over here into the boundary. Do you decide I'm going to take my defense and shift enough dudes over here to help out with these 4 guys, or do I keep a couple dudes home? This guy is Rome Odunze. He is a dude, will be a Sunday player, and so you probably want some help. You can see back here, that is Daniel Scott. Really, really good, really, really smart football player. Maybe my favorite player at Cal right now, which is saying a lot because I'm a quarterback and he is a safety. And so he's a good football player, but you can watch his reaction. When he sees that he's got trips into the boundary, he's trying to get help. Jackson Sermon, also senior linebacker from Washington, trying to get help. So these two guys recognize, hey, we got a bunch of dudes over here in the boundary. How do we get some help? Well, then UW shifts down. So they bring McMillan down, also another dude, and they put him on the inside. So now you've got a bunch package to the right when they get done with this shift into the boundary. What does that do? Well, it takes the corner, Jeremiah Irby, and shifts him in now. So he's compressed. You've now compressed this defense. You've taken bunch right here, these 3, and you've compressed them, brought the corner in to try to squeeze, take away space. This is exactly what Washington was looking for with this shift. What they're going to run here is a 3 vert into the boundary. So you're going to get Westover, clearing, crossing the safety's face. So these backers, the safety, all have to work together. You're going to get a seam route by the number 2 player, going to come right up that seam. If the safety lets that first route cross his face, he's going to jump this. He does not in this case. He jumps the first route across his face. And so the corner now sinks here. The 3rd receiver, who just came inside, McMillan, is now going to set up and run a rail down the sideline. That's where the ball is going to go on this play. We'll watch it real quick. You can see bunch sets up. Corner is inside on that second route, this vertical seam. And as a result, you get cleared off the outside. So let's think about this. If you are the corner, you expect to get help. So this is Miles Jernigan. He's going to try to make contact on the point and then play the flat. And so Jeremiah Irby, who is a great athlete and a good corner, but just a young buck, a true freshman out here, when he sees this seam cross his face, he honors that seam. Now, Michael Penix, also a very good quarterback, probably uses his eyes on this too, and we'll look at it from the end zone in just a second. So he probably looks right down the seam here to try to get Irby in. And you can see from his reaction that he jumps that route to the inside right there. He's jumping to the inside. I think Penix right here is steering this route down, and so Irby is honoring that by sinking inside. On the backside, they're just running a go route. They're taking up 3 guys with 1 guy, so that is a great numbers advantage for them down to the wide field. And instead, they've got 3 guys up top, really versus 1, 2 high defenders. Now, there's a couple of ways that you could defend this if you wanted to. You could make some kind of call to get a bracket back here. This is your nickel will. It's your corner, obviously. They could bracket here, and you could add the safety over to the mix. He's going to take anything that crosses the field to him. Your safety would take number 2 through, and then your corner would fall off onto anything here. But as a D coordinator, you would have to know in advance exactly what you were going to get and call it whenever you see trips into the boundary. It is tough duty. They are zoning it off. Again, you don't usually get teams that stack 3 guys into the boundary and then run verticals from there. It is tough duty on this corner to make a play on this ball because he lets the first route go. Safety ends up jumping that. But now you've got 2 on 1 into the boundary to work on the corner. Then on top of that, what I really like is they take the back and they put him on a little sit-down route here. If the backers were to fly out and help in this coverage, then you'd have the back on a check down. It is 3rd and 10 on this play, and so they have an answer for almost everything here in this play when they run it. Defensively, the Bears were playing a high cover 4 the whole first half. And so that is a huge piece of why they were so successful. You keep guys high in 4, you stop all those vertical routes, and you at least have somebody over the top of those vertical routes. So as a quarterback, you can't force the ball into coverage. And what it does is it forces that quarterback to check down. Washington was used to getting huge chunks on their vertical passing game because they got some dudes. Rome Odunze is out there. Jalen McMillan is out there. Polk is out there. So some dudes, Giles Jackson can go get it. All those guys can go get the ball. And so with all of that, they push the ball vertically a lot. But playing that high 4, being disciplined in coverage, and those play calls really by Peter Sirmon and this defensive staff, doing an excellent job of forcing them to check it down, which makes you run more plays. More plays means more opportunity to make a mistake, to stall out. As a result, they caught Washington in some penalties that were absolute drive killers in that first half by making them rep more plays. They got a holding call, they got an offensive pass interference call. So they got all kinds of stuff going their way because they were forcing Washington to run more plays just by playing that high 4 coverage. It's the old, and I hate this terminology, bend but don't break. You let them move down the field by staying high, let them check down, let them throw the stuff underneath, and then the field condenses when you get down towards the red zone. And so when they did, Washington got in trouble with some penalties. It was because that high cover 4 that they were playing, covering everything over the top, taking that vertical passing game away from Washington. So that is a look at the Dogs versus the Bears. Next week, the Ducks come to town. And so that is a huge one. This Oregon team looks really good. We will break down some film coming up during the week. I will give you my preview of this Oregon Duck team. We will talk to Coach Wilcox. We'll have a player interview as well. But until then, I do appreciate you guys watching. I'm looking for this Bears team to improve every week. A little offensive spark last week. Hopefully they can get some more this week versus the Ducks. We shall see on Saturday. Remember, you can always catch our broadcast on KGO 810. I am Mike Pawlawski for Bear Insider and the Ultimate Insider podcast. Go Bears.